Okay, folks, welcome back to the Jersey Swap podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Tebbets. We're ready to trade threads with a familiar foe this week. I think it's fair to say that the yet-to-be-named rivalry with Nashville SC hasn't been as vibrant as maybe the 2018 USL season, back when Cincinnati and Nashville were on pretty good terms with each other. When FCC started slow in MLS, Nashville started high. When Cincinnati hit their peaks, Nashville fired Gary Smith and they sank in the table. When we were both in the same level, we were in different conferences. So this season feels like,
a classic rivalry.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm here when you're not here. You're here when I'm not here. That's how it feels like. This season could be different, though. We're both on the same side of the ledger this time. Nashville, you guys are sizzling like hot chicken. At FCC, we're cooling down like Grater's ice cream. So we've brought back frequent guest Tim Sullivan from Club and Country to open the ledger on Nashville SC. Welcome back to the show, Tim.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, we've had you, I think, on out of all the Nashville guests, I think you've been on the most. So we know you the most, I think.
That can be a good or a bad thing.
Well, I mean, you're also doing some interesting things. I hear that Club and Country is now underneath a bigger umbrella within the Nashville sports scene. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we're a member of the 440 Sports Network. So one of our compatriots, Braden Gall, started a network. He's a longtime podcast sort of guy, and he started a network essentially of several different podcasts within the Nashville sports sphere. He's got football shows, both NFL and college. He's even kind of branched out a little bit. He's doing politics stuff. I'm not positive if that's under his 440 umbrella, but so we're a big part of that network too, and we're happy to be a big part of 440 Sports.
Yeah, I mean, you got the Predators. You've got I think Vanderbilt is under that. You guys cover SEC quite a bit as well, so it feels like a nice, comfy little thing to open up, especially with also all the soccer within Tennessee. You've got one Knoxville, you've got Chattanooga, both squads.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot going on there in Tennessee. But we, of course, are interested in only one team, Nashville SC. So we brought you in. Obviously, Nashville SC has undergone a lot of changes. We mentioned the whole thing about Gary Smith getting the axe last year. Brought on BJ Callaghan to be the head coach. We covered a little bit talking about it last year. Is it too early to sort of make a good judgment about how good of a fit he is as head coach for Nashville SC?
Yeah, I would say so, because if you asked that question 3 weeks ago, I'd say, yeah, it's too early and it looks like it's going terribly. Now, I think 3 victories on the hop, you would say it's too early, but it looks like it's going awesome. And I think the big picture kind of storyline is that Callaghan is doing something completely different than Gary Smith wanted to do. He wants to possess as the primary method of controlling the game. He wants to get out and press a little bit. So it's a completely different philosophy than I think we can admit, bunker and counter sort of philosophy that Gary Smith would take exception to me describing his tactics as. But it is a complete wholesale change to what this club was doing. Yes, it is going really well right now, and I think the roster turnover has happened a little bit more quickly and effectively than a lot of fans expected. But at this time, you don't know if a win over Philadelphia Union, if wins over Portland and Montreal, which are a little less meaningful, but certainly still meaningful for a club that started with just 1 point through 2 matches, are those telling the story? Or is it the struggles in those first 2 matches that will be the story? Obviously, the answer is most likely going to be somewhere in between, but I think the BJ Callaghan project was always going to take some time. And right now it looks like that time has elapsed a little bit quicker than we thought. And we will know what BJ Callaghan is going to be a little sooner than we originally thought.
Yeah, I was going to bring up, I won't say your opponents were all cupcakes. I mean, you mentioned the 3-1 victory that Nashville had at Philadelphia, of all places. But you've also had wins against Portland and Montreal at home. You've got the 0-0 draw against a toothless Revs team. So, I mean, it looks to me like it's a matter of facing the right opponents at this time.
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. And even at the time, I said the Philadelphia match might have been a little bit of fool's gold. We won't know for a long time. But yeah, a big part of it is that Nashville has an early season schedule that is pretty simple. No game is easy in MLS, but if you're going to play pretty poor opponents, you're going to look better than if you play pretty good opponents. I have it on good authority. And Nashville's taken advantage of that. I think late last year when BJ Callaghan took over, they were not in a position where they were going to take advantage of that. So they are making progress within the BJ Callaghan project, so to speak. But it is something that we don't know if this is suddenly turning over a new leaf and all of a sudden the team is going to be awesome, or more likely they've taken steps forward, but not necessarily to put themselves into the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference, or if it is complete just fool's gold, which I don't think is a realistic option of those three either.
I mean, it does help that Nashville, you guys have a pretty big home slate in the first 10 games of the season, but you do have, not only is FC Cincinnati coming into town, you then have to go on the road against Charlotte, and trust us, Charlotte is not an easy win at their stadium this year. So I think it seems like the opponents are going to get relatively harder, and you're going to start seeing just what BJ Callaghan can do, but also what this attack can do. You guys have scored in bunches quite a bit. And I think the question that comes to mind is this overall the offense, performing well, or is it a matter of finally the number 9 is settled?
Yeah, I think there's still, well, I guess to put it most bluntly, the number 9 is probably settled because Sam Surridge is the guy. He's going to be the guy unless they make a summer signing. The question is just how productive can you be with the personnel that Nashville has? The personnel isn't going to change that much, aside from one aspect, which they do have the opportunity to get better in midfield, which is just a matter of Gaston Brugman being healthy enough to play more minutes and get the ball into the attack in dangerous positions. But I do think Sam Surridge is going to be the number 9. In terms of how effective the offense is overall, we have seen Nashville get so many penalties early this season. They missed a pair of them against Portland, but it is a situation where I think you look at what this club has been able to do and you say, yeah, they probably aren't going to be averaging, two attempts from the spot per match. And it's something that there's a little bit of an element of things looking rosier than they are. But on the other side of things, you look at how they're generating some of their other goals as well. And you see concepts of play that make a lot of sense with the personnel that Nashville has and with what BJ Callaghan wants to do. Because last year we saw them trying to do the things that BJ Callaghan wants to do, and they just couldn't do it. The players were not there. Anibal Godoy was not going to be running a possession-oriented system at 35 years old or whatever he is. Now you're seeing that they have kind of adapted the personnel to be what BJ Callaghan wants it to be. There's definitely going to be much more effective attack than there was at the end of last season. Definitely much more effective attack than we saw with any consistent basis under Gary Smith. It's just a matter of how much more effective. And I don't think the past 3 games are necessarily going to be super indicative of what the ceiling of this club is going to be over a 34-match season.
You're certainly getting the right people to score. I mean, all the people that have been introduced to the system seem to be pulling their weight. You guys made a ton of additions and subtractions over the offseason. Probably they weren't I think the glamorous changes that you might see within the likes of Atlanta, within the likes of Miami and Cincinnati, but some pretty big changes here. I mean, you mentioned Gaston Brugman, a 32-year-old defensive midfielder, got from the Galaxy, very big move early on in this whole cash trade thing. Yeah. But also a few names that I think that are really starting to show up. Edward Tagseth. 24-year-old central midfielder. He's been pulling a lot of chains. Ahmed Kassem is also, I believe is he an under 22?
Yeah. So this is his only year eligible for under 22 signing, or I guess when you sign him, they can play until 20. But yes, he's an under 22 signing.
Yeah, so he's scored a few goals already for you guys this season. I'm going to focus mostly on Tagseth. I mean, is he probably being used in the middle as like a Pavel Buka for FC Cincinnati, where he is being more in charge of the offense than what Hani Mukhtar was in charge of?
Yeah, he's much more of like an engine room sort of guy. He's like your 6'8" hybrid, but with the ability to be a bit more of an attacker than you would think of as your typical 8s. When he signed, he had been playing a lot on the wing with his club from Norway, Rosenborg. So he was playing on the wing, and I looked at his skill set and I said, yeah, he's pretty good on the wing, but I think he's so good playing in the middle and riding out challenges and being able to connect with the attacking teams, or the attacking players on his team, And I think that's what we've seen a lot of this season already from him. He's the sort of guy who is going to be a bit of a a surprisingly tough guy in the middle because he is not the biggest guy in the world. He wears like a headband with long blonde hair, so he looks a little bit tougher. He looks like the most badass rec league guy out there sometimes, but he has the ability to connect with the attack. And what we are seeing out of BJ Callaghan's scheme so far is that they're basing primarily out of a 4-2-2-2, so that really narrow midfield going up to 2 attackers. And that, I think, plays really well to Togseth's strengths. He's the sort of guy who kind of has the skill set of a winger a little bit, but is most comfortable playing in the middle. And when you have a guy who can play in the middle, you probably want to play him there. It's like a cornerback on the football field. If you have the ability to play that position, you should play there because not as many guys have that ability. Togseth is that sort of guy when it comes to playing in the middle. And he's done a really good job getting to know his teammates really quickly because, like you mentioned, there has been so much turnover, which I guess can be seen even as a bit of an advantage because there aren't existing relationships that kind of need to be broken into by guys like Togseth. It's all new guys, basically, trying to connect the back line to the attackers. So it is a situation where a guy like him has the skill set, is already building the chemistry, and has been a really strong performer for this club already this year.
Yeah, I've already heard some really good praises. I mean, Matt Doyle has spoken glowingly about him on his resources, and some of the other names here. Brian Acosta coming back to the MLS, playing that center midfield as well. Andy Najar, a big pickup after his stint with CD Olympia, used to be with DC United. Patrick Yazbek, Jason Palacios. These are names that aren't necessarily familiar to a lot of people, but out of all these names, which one do you feel is really going to be pulling a lot of weight this year?
I don't know if Qasim falls under that category because he is kind of a different guy. He's more of an attacker, but he's already impressed. He's one of those guys who comes in the offseason and you think this is a prime Goss theorem sort of candidate who takes a year to get his feet wet and get used to the travel and the different types of environments that you're playing in MLS. And he goes off in his second season. He's already looked really good. There are going to be mid-season lulls as you have the length and the kind of arduousness of the season that MLS asks of people. He's going to kind of exceed Goss theorem sort of things. But I do think you look at Andy Najar, and he's been a starter for every match that he's been healthy for. He's the sort of guy who we know what he was able to do in his brief stint with LAFC under Bob Bradley, but definitely his longer 2 stints with DC United. You know what you're getting out of him, and fortunately, you look at him and he's a guy who's 31 years old, and you're still getting the same things out of him that you were when he was like 24 or whatever. He's been a really good fit for this club, has really helped the back line be able to be a bit more of a possession-oriented back line rather than you look at a fullback, say, okay, just boot it up the field, we'll see what happens, maybe get into the final third and whip it across. He has a much more robust skill set to play the type of game that BJ Callaghan wants to play, and I think that he's going to be a key player to staying healthy. He's at times had problems with that, much like Gaston Brugman. But if he stays healthy, he's going to be a key part of Nashville reaching whatever heights they're able to reach.
Yeah, I mean, a big replacement for Shaq Moore, who was traded to Dallas in the offseason. There's a few other subtractions to talk about. You mentioned Anibal Godoy finally moving on to San Diego. Brian Anunga, who made the free transfer to FC Cincinnati.
Talk about the 2018 USL days again, right?
We're getting right back into it. A few other names: Randall Leal, Lucas McNaughton, some big names that I think probably big within Nashville SC, but maybe not big on a national stage. Are any of those sort of like head scratches in terms of why was this person let go?
Yeah, I think the one that might be in that category is Lucas McNaughton. He's a dual citizen of the United States and Canada. For whatever reason, he requires a green card as a Canadian citizen. It has never been adequately explained to me. So that kind of makes it make sense that Nashville wanted to free up an international slot. But he was a guy who was playing a lot at center back, playing on the cheap as well. Does not command a high salary, to say the least. But Randall Leal is one that it makes sense when you look at the big picture, because when he was healthy, he was an incredible player for Nashville SC, was capable of things that nobody else was capable of. Just bitten by the injury bug over the past few years, and Nashville said, you're on a huge contract. We can't really afford to keep paying you what was a DP contract. It was TAM in more recent years. But if we can't rely on you for more than 5 or 6 games, as I believe he played last year, we need to move on so that we can kind of remake this club with guys that BJ Callaghan knows and can be brought in for his system. So I think when you look at the guys who have departed, maybe some of them are disappointing, whether from an emotional standpoint or from an on-field standpoint. But if you look at each individual situation, honestly, they all make sense, especially when you consider a coaching change and you're going to want to kind of retool the roster for a new coaching philosophy.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that we have Anunga as our backup to Obi. We'll see what the reaction is that he'll get from the crowd. Hopefully, it's a good one. I mean, he seems to be really fitting in as far as that extra need off the bench. If you need a double six, if you need,
he's really good at the things that he is good at, for sure. His what he lacks is also kind of clear at times, but sometimes you only need the things that he's good at, and he's going to come in and do them very well.
Yeah, and he seems to be also a great person that fits in and gives you a nice team attitude. I've been seeing that off of the bench from him, and hopefully he's able to sort of, like I said, get that good reaction from the Nashville crowd. Let's talk a little bit about the formation that BJ Callaghan could be playing with. It seems like it's been a little flexible. It's if you depend on FOTMob like I do for my formations, it seems to be very malleable. Are we looking at maybe a 4-4-2? You mentioned the 4-2-2-2.
Yeah.
Is that what he's most comfortable with?
Yeah, I think in attack, that's definitely what they are mostly going with, staying narrow a little bit and connecting the two lines of midfield with the attacking players. In rest defense, it has been a little bit more flexible there. As we probably know, Andy Nahar can play kind of multiple different ways at right back. He played a lot of right center back for DC in those like Lucho Acosta, Wayne Rooney days. So he's a guy who gives you some flexibility, but it's 4-4-2 essentially in defense for the most part, and then 4-2-2-2 in the attack. And those are obviously formational philosophies that meld together very well when you have the personnel that Nashville has.
Does that help out like the likes of Hani Mukhtar? I mean, Mukhtar has been it seems like the stable attacking presence, but it felt like last year he had a little bit of the shine gone from his attack. Has this helped him sort of rediscover his stroke?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, last year's struggles were more about kind of early in the season. It was just it was weird. The vibes were off and it just wasn't working. When Callaghan came in, he tore the whole thing down instead of making incremental changes, which was probably the right thing to do last year. I think this year, what Hani is doing is more similar to what we've seen from him in the past. I'm pretty interested to see when Nashville plays against a really good team, which Cincinnati will probably be their first chance in a while. If you consider Philadelphia just having an off game as a possibility for that match, him being able to do the thing that he does best, which is run at the back line with the ball. Obviously, when you squeeze as many attacking players as Nashville is going to be squeezing into the center of the pitch instead of having width, the opponent can react the same way, and you don't have some of those wide open spaces that he likes to get up to speed with the ball on his feet. We've seen him be able to succeed in other ways as well. He can finish very well, even as a pure striker. He can connect with other players. So he's probably going to have to adapt to do more of those things against really good teams, because the space is going to be more constricted in the middle when you're playing against an opponent that is both well coached and well personneled. But it is something that the formation might not be the best fit logically for what he is good at, but I think his robust skill set allows him to succeed in it. And sometimes we saw more, probably 2023, being a bit more of a complementary attacking player. It's not really what he wants to do, but I think if you give him the opportunity to do it in fits and starts, it really helps him get going. And that is something that this formation allows him to not have to carry the entire burden of the attack. And that's something that should probably help him on the matches where he starts slowly. It gives him a chance to affect the game in other ways.
Yeah. Let's see really how that works out. I really think that, if you can find that connection between the rest of the team and Mukhtar and Surge up top, even throwing in Teal Bunbury in there as a late substitution, hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an advantage in the offensive strike. Even Jacob Schaffelberg, I mean, that's a name that haunted us here in Cincinnati. He performed not only against us as Nashville SC, but also with the Canadian team. He'd scored there at TQL Stadium as well. So it's really, I think it's a good challenge for both teams coming up. I mean, FC Cincinnati is obviously taking some time to try to acclimate themselves, and at some point they're going to have to turn the radio on. They're going to have to get the station that they want to listen to and cruise control from there. But for this game, how do you feel this could result? What direction do you feel this result could go in? I mean, FCC hasn't beaten Nashville in 3 matches.
Yeah, I think you can pretty much always say throw out the table when you have what should be a rivalry match. You mentioned at the beginning why it hasn't really felt that way at times. I think you can especially throw out the table when you've only played a handful of matches per team. So I wouldn't say Cincinnati comes in here looking like a wounded duck from Nashville's perspective, to say the least. What I would say is Nashville's home field advantage has been a pretty big deal in fits and starts at Geodis Park. It has generally been pretty awesome. There have been times where, especially when the results weren't going well, that it didn't feel like Nashville wanted to come in and entertain the crowd. They're always going to want to entertain the crowd now, and that should help them get the crowd behind them. And I think that's going to be a big boost for them. But I think these are pretty much evenly matched teams, and low trials, high variance sport like soccer, who knows? But it does feel like if this match were at TQL Stadium, that would be trouble for Nashville SC. I think in Geodis Park, it feels like one that they will certainly want to get a result out of, and they will go into the match thinking we can get a win in this match. Yeah,
and I mean, if you stick your hand outside and check the weather, there's a good chance that FCC and Nashville are in a draw right at the moment. It seemed to be like that with the 2018 season being so close as it was the last year in USL, and even the past 2 of the past 3 have been draws as results. So I honestly, and I'm looking at my own prediction for this, I see another draw coming up. I see it could be low scoring depending on who FC Cincinnati can get on their defensive line. They were shot last week, threadbare in terms of who they could play. I think you get back some of the talent. I think you get back some of the defensive prowess. And I think it's going to be at a low scoring game, 1-1.
I always feel like when you logically say that it's going to be a low scoring game, that's always when it goes a little bit crazy. But I could see a 2-2 or a 2-1 in Nashville's favor as being the way that it goes. Again, we don't necessarily know if Nashville's attack is going to continue to be as stellar as it has looked over the past 3 matches. But if it does, I think, especially at Geodis Park, they have a chance to put up a couple goals. The problem is you also need to prevent a really strong Cincinnati team from doing the same.
Are there any injuries or any suspensions that we should be aware of? I know we're coming out of the international break.
Yeah, so Qasim actually was a game time scratch last weekend. He was supposed to start, did not end up doing so, did not play. So we don't have a ton of clarity at this point in the week on his status. I would imagine they said he was sick, so I would imagine that's something that he can come back from. It's just a matter of, does he have the fitness to start? Bringing him off the bench probably has its own advantages too, but that would be the main one that would really affect guys who are potentially unavailable this weekend.
Yeah, Miles Robinson was sort of in the same thing. He could have perhaps played 60 minutes, maybe tops, after his after he had come off the pitch against Charlotte, but he had his own sickness to deal with. So right now it feels like flip a coin and someone's going to get sick.
Yes, especially those of us with children in elementary school, it's unavoidable.
Absolutely. But as far as all the people going down to Geodis Park, I mean, I've asked this quite a bit in terms of what's available within the stadium. What are the best eats, drinks? Is there any? If we expand that net out a little bit, are there places within the city that you would recommend?
Yeah, of course. ML Rose, which is a bar that is a 14-minute and 20-second walk away from Geodis Park. I used to have the image on my watch of how long it took me to walk. They sponsor our podcast as well, so support them. They are on 8th Street South. They are the closest bar to Geodis Park, unless you want to go do some afternoon karaoke at Santa's Pub beforehand. But I feel like a lot of people from especially Southwest Ohio visit Nashville a lot. If you want to do the Broadway thing will always be there. And that's a pretty cool opportunity when visiting fans come into town. But ML Rose is our go-to, and so they're the one that I will shout out for sure.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where our supporter groups are going to conglomerate, but I can say be careful when you're doing your songs, your soccer chants within Broadway. I remember doing that for a Tottenham game down there, and didn't get a lot of good looks from the patronage there. But that's also years in the past. So I can't wait to really see what this matchup is going to be like. 8:30 Eastern time, 7:30 Central time for kickoff on Saturday. FC Cincinnati traveling down to Nashville. But yeah, Tim, thank you very much for joining us. Where can we find you guys? I know Wes said, give our regards to Wes. He wasn't able to make it today, but where can we find you guys on social media?
Yeah, so I'm off Twitter, thankfully. So do not look for me there, although the account is still active, and I think it might automatically post whenever the podcast goes up. But if you look for the podcast on your podcatcher of choice, Club and Country is the best way to search for it, or all the episodes published at clubcountryusa.com as soon as they are published on Spotify and similar platforms. And I'm trying to do a little bit more with linking Instagram to every time a post goes up, but Instagram has been pretty good for us recently. You can find Wes at Wes Bowling TN on, I believe, Blue Sky, but certainly he occasionally still uses Twitter, and you can find him there too.
And that's where you can find Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Go to Cincy Soccer Talk on Instagram, on Blue Sky, on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. We have our own Instagram popping up images after the games as well. You can go to our website at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. You can also check us out in your favorite podcasting platform. But that closes out this week for the Jersey Swap. For Tim Sullivan, thank you very much for joining us. Keep your kit clean, Tim. Thank you.